If I had my way, everything would be so nice. This world would be like Paris. No, it would be a paradise. No one would ever have to say, I'm gonna get my wish someday. All one would have to do is say, this is my order, if you may.
Welcome to another episode of The School Without Walls. I'm the host and creator of this educational program. I'm Dr. Antonio Hobbs. And what we're going to do this year is continue our theme, Black History After February. We want to encourage our people to realize that in order to have your history written, you must do it yourselves. So we're going to do a few things about Black history. And our subject today is the Black family. And of course, I will bring my guests on later today, and we will be talking about some problems of the Black family and some things we might be able to do to improve ourselves. Let us define family as one of the major institutions. And what is an institution? And one of the four basic institutions I intended to say. And of course, an institution is a well-established way of meeting a need. Well, a family was ordained by God, those who believe in God and those who believe in science and not God, the cosmic system, ordained the family in order to perpetuate the species. So therefore the family should start with male and female. And from that comes children. And of course the male and the female are called father and mother in our society, and they have a responsibility of training the children the way that they should go. So many of the problems that we're having today, in my opinion, is because of the lack of families. That's the foundation. There's a scripture that says, if the foundation be destroyed, that's the King James Version. If the foundation be destroyed, what shall the righteous do? I like the contemporary writing even better. It said, if the foundation is being destroyed, what shall the righteous do? And I would like to say that the foundation, which is the family, is being destroyed daily in Western civilization. And of course, that takes in not only the United States, but Europe and all of the countries that derives from Europe. Now, we also want to deal with cause and effect. For every effect, there's a cause. So the question on the floor that my guests will be working with is, what's causing so many problems? We certainly are having problems in all families in Western culture, but the Black family is leading. My take is a three-letter word, S-I-N, sin. That's falling short of what God would have us to do. That's sin. Rodney, how many minutes do I have? I have 4 minutes to conclude this section. I will bring my guest in, who is Reverend Leon Jones, in a few minutes. But I want to talk about some things that the School Without Wall is all about. It's the goals of the School Without Wall are fourfold. One is training young people, the importance of good work ethics, teaching that they have a moral duty and obligation to obtain and maintain a system of moral values that will lead them to economic success. All of you out there under the sound of my voice, we would like, if you support this, you'd find some youngster that you can mentor and get them to understand in an early age that they have this responsibility. And there is a difference between training and education. Education is having them to understand that all people are not college material. We want as many to go to college as feel that they can be successful in college, but don't feel that if you don't go to college, you don't have to be successful, but you certainly need a trade. You don't need to just finish high school and go look for jobs. We have about 3 more minutes in this session, so let me move on. Economics is very important. We must teach them that the surest and safest way out of poverty to economic success is a good, balanced education with good behavior. Now, nearing the conclusion, we are, in recent months, we've had quite a few African American males to be killed by policemen. And we must understand that we have a responsibility there to help offset that, and we must do more than criticize the act of the policeman. Tell your youngsters that there's a law against resisting arrest. And if a policeman stops you and you don't feel that you've done anything, submit yourself to the policeman and let him arrest you. Therefore, you won't give him a reason to kill you. Resisting arrest is against the law. So, number 2, do not run from policemen. You cannot outrun a bullet. Submit yourself to them, even if you feel that they have stopped you by mistake. Be courteous, respect authority, and all of this starts at home in the family. If we train the child the way it should go, the child has a much greater chance of longevity in this world. We should be approaching Randy Coleman when I have 1 minute to conclude. After break, I will bring my guest, Reverend Leon Jones will come on, who is an associate with the Reverend Hank Wilkins here at the St. James United Methodist Church here in Pine Bluff, Arkansas. We will break, and I'll be right back with Reverend Jones.
I love taking care of my mom. It wasn't easy at first. She learned how to better communicate her needs.
And you learned how to not ignore yours.
I discovered how to make healthier meals.
And I discovered how much I enjoyed them.
Becoming a caregiver is a learning experience for everyone. Find articles, tips, and tools from experts and others who have been in your place. The Caregiving Resource Center at aarp.org/caregiving.
As an American, it's hard to hear that we have a serious hunger issue in our country. And as a parent, it's even harder to hear that 1 in 5 of our kids struggles with hunger, especially when billions of pounds of good food are wasted every year. Feeding America is a nationwide network of food banks that helps provide billions of meals to families in need right in your community. Visit feedingamerica.org to support Feeding America and your local food bank. Together we can solve hunger. Together, we're Feeding America.
The earthquakes you see in movies are one thing, but real life is a completely different animal. Just because you can't predict an earthquake doesn't mean that you can't prepare for one. In the event of a real earthquake, you should drop, cover, and hold on. Visit ready.gov/earthquake and practice what to do to keep you and your family safe in the event of a real earthquake. And you'll be seen as a hero by your family and your loved ones.
Visit ready.gov/earthquake today.
Those of you who have just joined us, I'm Dr. Anthony Hobbs, host of this program called The School Without Walls. My guest is the Reverend Leon Jones, who is associated with Reverend Hank Wilkins, the pastor of St. James United Methodist Church here in Pine Bluff, Arkansas. Glad to have you with us.
It's my pleasure to be
And
here, Dr.
we're
Hobbs.
going to talk today about problems of the African American family. What are some of the problems you feel that we have?
Well, I think one of the major problems, Dr. Hobbs, is illiteracy.
Illiteracy, not knowing.
Not knowing. The literacy rate among African American or black or Negro, however you want to put it, is very high, and it's inexcusably high. And I think that we've had an opportunity to do some things, but we haven't done them.
What do you think causes that?
Well, I think it's apathy. I think apathy toward education, and then so many times they have in-kind services that they get, and they don't need to work. A lot of people don't have to work because they get so many services from the government.
I see. That's very broad, ignorant. What are some of the things that we can do, and how could we help to solve the problem?
I think one of the things we can do is increase the availability of vocational education, and matter of fact, and start our education process a little earlier in life. When I say earlier in life, some people think I'm thinking about 8 or 9 years old, but I'm thinking about in the womb.
Oh, I see.
Right, and when we start teaching kids younger about their value and what they can do, I think they do better.
What institution would be the institution that would start teaching them that early?
Family.
The family.
Yes.
Now, if a family is illiterate and doesn't know, you got to have somebody outside, some institution outside of the family. How would you recommend we would go about trying to reach that?
I think the next step would be the church.
The church.
Absolutely.
Right. So you would say we need more church outreach.
More church outreach and more church involvement.
In our communities. I think that's a wonderful idea. I would like to suggest to the community that each church that's listening to us would make sure that they have an outreach in the community, trying to reach some family that, how would we determine the family that perhaps is in need? What are some of the...
Actually, there are ways to determine it right now. They have people that are in our churches that are working certain agencies in the city and in the county that are in and out of these homes at all times, checking on their need basis. And those people could supply, with the information that we need to see which families are in dire need of additional help from churches or faith-based institutions.
Okay. Is there any way other than there are so many people that don't go to church? How could we reach those people?
That's what I'm talking about. The agencies that are in touch with these people. Whenever a young lady becomes impregnated, generally she gets the association with some agency to assist her if she's kind of on a poor style or indigent.
I see.
And in that case, then there's a record of what she needs. And then our people who live in the communities can have their eyes open to see, if a young lady is, have a baby out of wedlock, she needs some assistance. I think we're throwing our young babies under the bus, too soon, and forgetting about them. And when we do that, then they feel that they've been neglected, and then more things happen on a negative scale. But if the church has more of an outreach, more of an involvement with these families, Dr. Hobbs, I think we can make a difference.
I see. Now, what is your definition of a family? How would you define a family?
My definition of a family is a man and a woman and children. That's my definition of
That's
family.
The traditional family,
Traditional family.
Supported by everything that's right.
Right,
Bible,
absolutely.
Quran, all the holy books.
All religion, absolutely.
Right.
Now, I also understand, Dr. Hobbs, that we live in a time right now where a lot of families are not made up of a father and a mother and the children.
Right.
We have grandparents, we have single parents, we have all sorts of families now. And we have to take that under consideration, that the family is not the way it used to be in all cases. Now, I grew up in a single family home, but it was a lot of love there, and a lot of nurturing and a lot of caring from my older siblings and from the community. So the community is a little different now.
Was there a grandfather involved?
No grandfather involved.
No grandfather.
Absolutely.
So your male image was your
my older brothers and my uncles. Yes.
And uncles.
Yes.
I see. Well, we are living in a day now where some people say a family constitutes two people of the same gender. What do you think of that?
Well, I think that's unnatural. I think it's untraditional, and I think that's one of the things that's hurting our family structure right now. That's just my humble opinion.
Your humble opinion. Do you have any biblical reference to indicate to go beyond just your thinking?
I do. In Leviticus 18:22, God tells us that man should not lie with man as he does with woman.
So if you're a believer of the Bible, if you're a person of faith, then you shouldn't be in support of that contemporary family style, then, should you?
I agree.
Right.
You should not be in support of that.
I have noticed that it seems like the church is silent on almost anything that's contrary to the doctrine of the church. Have you anything? Is there anything that you know that any church is speaking out against that could be destructive in our society?
I know very few churches that are speaking out against the things that are coming against the church today, especially homosexuality.
Right.
I don't know whether it's political correctness or just afraid of hurting people's feelings, but what I have learned from my association with God is that we're out to change things, and we have to hurt feelings to do that.
Right. You mean in a positive fashion?
In a positive way.
Right, because they're hurting the society in a negative way by being political correct. And that is just one of the many things. Anything else that's going on, we have about another minute in this second, that we could do to help make the family better. We realize that the black family is not the only family that's in trouble.
Oh, that's true.
But we have more problems than any other family. According to statistics, I read a stat the other day that 70% of black children are born out of wedlock.
Absolutely. But I read that statistic
70,
as well.
That's real high.
I did too. And I went back to look at 63, 64, and 65, and I found that back then it was 22 to 24% out of wedlock babies. So before all of the civil rights took effect, before all of the in-kind services took effect, we had better traditional families intact than we do have now.
We have 1 minute to close out this segment, and we will be back in just a few minutes to conclude this episode talking about the black family.
Taking care of a family member can lead to plenty of questions. Fortunately, there's a place to get the answers, for them and for you. Find articles, tips, and tools from experts and others who have been in your place. The Caregiving Resource Center at aarp.org/caregiving.
I want to eat apples and bananas. I need to eat apples and bananas. Why can't I eat?
1 in 5 children struggles with hunger in America. Support the Feeding America nationwide network of food banks to help provide meals to those in need. Join us at feedingamerica.org.
Hey, did you know 2.4 million loving cats and dogs in shelters and rescues need our help to find a home? Let's go to theshelterpetproject.org and meet if you are in a shelter near you. Harlow, oh, she's one great listener who loves to hear all your stories. My kind of cat. Cerulo is a sweet, goofy boy who's eager to please. Sounds just like another dog I know. So go to theshelterpetproject.org, search your local shelters and rescues, and go for a cuddle with your next best friend. Adopt.
Those of you who just joined us, I'm Dr. Hobbs, host of this educational program, School Without Walls, and my guest is Reverend Leon Jones, who is an associate with Reverend Hank Wilkins here at St. James United Methodist Church, and we are discussing the problems of the black family. We were just talking about the importance of the educational aspect, but a lot of us believe that the moral problem is much greater than, quote, education. We know that all of our students are required to go to some educational institution, but they're not required to go to church. And so many of them are not going to church now. And of course, that is one of the basic institutions the church is one of the four basic institutions of the world. And this is my take on the church and the family. The family should have in it the church. The family should have in it the school.
Right.
And the family should have within it the government. And we have so many families today due to the lack of that basic training. It has nothing to do with formal training in this educational institution, and that comes from mom and dad, or mom or dad, or from dad.
Absolutely.
And so many of our youngsters are like fourth generation of children born without parents to help them. 14-year-old girl has a baby by a man who's unknown.
Right.
And then she struggles. 13 years later, that she's a grandmother.
Right.
13 more years later, which would be about 33 years after the first one was born, a great-grandmother.
That's right.
And that's about 3 generations of no moral foundation. So what do you think about that? And what can we do to get those people in church?
Well, there are several things we can do. We can increase our door-to-door canvassing.
Outreach
for, and matter of fact, some groups, some church groups, some Christian or religious groups are regularly, on a consistent basis, at our doors. And we know some of those groups. I'm not here to name those.
Right.
But they're consistent in what they do.
Right.
And they take in more adherents on a regular basis. Those are some things that our traditional churches, especially in this area, I'm familiar with that, are not doing.
Right.
There are some that do it on a regular periodic basis, but they're not on a regular basis.
And that's founded on Scripture too, right?
That's exactly right.
Christ sent his disciples out in twos, right?
Right, that's right.
To do exactly what these other folks that we won't call in their name that are doing, and they're siphoning off some of our members.
They really are. They really are.
And I've analyzed that. Seems like they get some of the members that really have a desire to improve themselves.
Right, right.
And that's pulling some of the better members out of the traditional church.
Absolutely. And let me throw in that education thing again. A lot of people, because of ignorance, are led astray with doctrines that are not actually fitted for them, because they're not educated. Again, when they're educated, they know they can read better.
Right.
They can understand better. So it all goes together. Whenever we can get a child, teach them to read, teach them the moral values of the Bible, we have a better citizen.
That is so true. That is very true. So anything else we can talk about here? We've talked about education and religion, and of course there must be a third factor, because if we deal with what we call the with theology in the sense of numerology.
Right.
The Trinity has 3 parts. Every problem has 3 parts. So we've found one is the lack of formal education.
Right.
Lack of spirituality. There's one more.
Okay.
See if you can come up with it. I have it in my mind.
Either financial or
it's economic.
Economic. That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
Economics. You can be too poor to prosper.
That's exactly
Is that right?
That's exactly right.
Too poor to prosper.
And let me throw in something, Dr. Hobbs, and I get a lot of controversy over this, but it's my position that poverty is a sin.
Yes, you're correct.
It's a sin that has been rooted in our community, and we need to get it out.
It's caused by sin.
Yes.
Men are sinning, and mankind is sinning to cause it.
Right, right. And so a lot of people ascribe some of these problems on God. These problems are ascribed because of man's doing.
That's correct.
Or lack thereof.
There you go.
And I believe when we get more education, moral education,
spiritual education, as well as secular education.
Secular education. Understand the value of prosperity and the value of education when it comes to economics. I think we have a better family.
You got a good point there. We're coming into another episode after this one.
Okay.
And I want to put more emphasis on what we're talking about, and that is poverty and what is causing poverty. And people can be too poor to prosper. People need help when it comes to that. And it's not necessarily the way we are doing it, like handouts.
Right.
There's an old saying that rather than give a man a fish, what should you do?
Teach him how to fish.
Teach him how to fish. And I'm for that 100%. And we're about to close out on this segment, but I have a strong feeling that within the next 36 months, a lot of the government programs are going to cut off. These people are going to be in a bad shape.
I believe you're right.
Who have not prepared themselves to make a living.
I believe you're right.
So we will close out on the economic problem, and we'll be back in a few minutes for episode 2, continue with Reverend Jones.